opinions and statements expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of WWDB, its staff, or management.
You are listening to In the Know with David O. Informative, substantive, intelligent talk radio on 860 AM WWDB. And now, your host, Philadelphia Councilman David O.
Good afternoon. This is Councilman David O. Thank you for joining me once again. It's In the Know with David O. here on WWDB 860 AM. We have a couple of very sharp gentlemen. They are, at the top of the food chain when it comes to what they do. And they share something in common. They're both U.S. Army Special Forces officers, both retired. You know them as Green Berets. And so they add that additional element to the work that they do. And what they do is in two different areas, but they've come together to address the issue of serving veterans, in particular through a pilot program that deals with combating suicide, homelessness, and substance abuse. Well, that's a subset of a lot of other people that have the same problems, struggle with the same issues. And so the question that we're going to discuss is, can technologies really help combat in a really impactful way the fight against suicide, homelessness, and substance abuse in the veterans community and possibly everywhere else? Well, our show is brought to you by Weinerman Pain and Wellness. They do a great job, and they obviously care because in addition to the service they do, they also fund programs like this where we try to bring you important information from a pretty neutral point of view through the experts that we bring onto the show. Last week we did that with an interview of Dean Miller, President and CEO of Philadelphia Alliance for Capital and Technologies, fostering growth and innovation. And Chris Wink, he's the co-founder and publisher of a magazine you might not have heard of. It's called Technically, and they are behind Philly Tech Week and Tech Week in Baltimore and a bunch of other things. They are social entrepreneurs and journalists. And I say that because you can listen to their interview, if you missed it, by going to www.wwdbam.com. That's a lot of W's, so let's skip the first three and just say go to www.dbam.com. If you want to see video, and a few of them are not up right now, but you can go to my YouTube page. It's In the Know with David O. and actually see what some of the folks talking look like. And it's always more fun, especially when we have musicians and performers on. That's always a lot of fun. If you have any questions or comments, by the way, or if you want to know something, listen, we're going to be dealing with this question in the next show from a physical fitness and nutrition expert, and it's not a question you haven't heard before. How do I get in shape for a wedding or for a trip to the beach, as a woman in about a month? Okay, that question gets asked a lot, but, what's the quality answer? And so, if you have a question that you want me to answer, what I try to do is get an expert who will bring substantive knowledge and experience to answering that question. You can send me email at davidoRadioshow@gmail.com. And you can also check me out on Facebook at David O or In the Know with David O Radio Show, Twitter and Instagram at David O Philly. Well, having said that, let me get to our guests. And we're devoting the entire show today to our two guests and the topic they're going to talk about, because the topic entails a lot more, as big as it is, it entails a lot more than just the issue of suicide, homelessness, and substance abuse. And so let me tell you about our two guests. They've been on the show before, and kind of like coming full circle, they are working together. Colonel retired Tim Williams, he is the executive director of the Philadelphia Veterans Multi-Service Center. They serve more than Philadelphians. They serve everyone in this region, and they do it for free. If you are an honorably discharged veteran, or if you're just a veteran, I'm sure they'll have a way to help you out. So he is just a tremendous asset to Philadelphia, a former colonel in the Green Berets. He is a ranger. He's a jump master. He's held positions of responsibility, including positions at FEMA, Special Operations Command, Special Forces, and other things, artillery, all kinds of stuff. And he has, I think, 3 master's degrees. Is that right, Tim?
Yeah, that's right. There's a lot of was's in there, Dave. Not is, but was.
What is there is tremendous humility. He's a very humble person for all of his accomplishments, and he is focused on the job he does. The other gentleman is Mike Manning. Mike Manning is CEO of CarePartners Plus, a technology innovation company that he founded that focuses on health care. And he has a fascinating background because he started out as a school teacher and then ended up being a Special Forces NCO, what we used to call in my day combat medic, and very highly trained, and then became a Special Forces officer. So he served in the U.S. Army Green Berets, and then somehow ended up at a hospital where he somehow took over bookkeeping and became the CFO, and then the CEO, and the CEO of the healthcare system, and on and on and on. And then he launches his own company. And so I'm going to start by asking these gentlemen to just, tell you a little bit about themselves. Why don't I start with Tim?
Well, Dave, obviously I'm not from around here. I'm from Arkansas originally. I live in New Jersey and I work in Philadelphia, so I've had a very complex life. But what I'd really like to say, obviously, is that, I've been trying to manage data for a long time in our organization, and they talk about data is the next fossil fuel or the next petroleum. That data, you really got to learn how to manage it. And just not out of the blue, but sort of out of left field, Mike come in one day and just said, "Hey, I want to really help you try to manage your data in conjunction with doing these multiple other IT things that I've been thinking about for a long time." And I'm like, "Hey, man, I got to embrace this guy." So it's been a little bit of a journey to get to this point, but we're in the middle of a pilot right now that is just going gangbusters. Hasn't been all smooth, but that's what pilot projects are all about, and we're making some things happen, and I'm really excited about it.
Let me ask you this for our listeners' sake. What is it that you do? What is it that the Veterans Multi-Service Center does?
Well, the Veterans Multi-Service Center is a comprehensive center that we provide comprehensive wraparound services. We do everything from meals for homeless veterans to housing for homeless veterans to veteran service officers who do the interface between the compensation and pension branch of the VA and the veteran. We have a thrift store that has a 3-pronged approach to make a house a home for a veteran. We donate 50% of our stuff from our thrift store to homeless veterans in their houses. It's also a jobs platform for veterans that may or may not have a resume that they can show that they can that need some help demonstrating that they are dependable and those type of things. We do a lot with veterans with some pretty high barriers, but we're also there for veterans. Anybody that needs a helping hand, we're there to provide it. And it really is, particularly if you have one day of active duty, we can help you in some manner or another.
In terms of scope, just for the folks listening to kind of understand what type of territory you're covering, what kind of weight you're lifting, how many people work at the VMC, Veterans Multi-Service Center, and how many people do you serve?
We serve over 3,500 veterans a year. We house over 500 veterans a year. We place in employment about 250 veterans a year, and we job train about 300 veterans a year. And we're in 3 states now. We're a regional organization, but we deliver local services. And I think that's what's key to understand about the Veterans Multi-Service Center is that we are locally focused, and we're all about delivering services to veterans free of charge. And we're all the way out from the New York border down through State College to the Maryland border. We skip a little bit of geography based upon the VA grants that we administer, and then we're in Philadelphia in the 4 counties. We're in the seven counties, starting with Burlington and South in New Jersey, and 3 counties in Delaware. So about 29 counties altogether in 3 states. So we've really grown quite a bit in the last 3 or 4 years, but it's all about providing local services to local veterans.
And how many people work at with the VMC?
Well, we have about 130 employees across 3 states and 11 facilities.
So it's pretty sizable operation.
It is a sizable operation. It runs me most of the time instead of me running it.
And I'll say this for our listeners in case they didn't know, but you might guess, bureaucracy. Anytime you're talking about like the Veterans Administration, serving veterans, grants, all that, territories, states, you're talking about a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of accounting, a lot of paperwork.
A lot of reporting requirements. We had Department of Labor grants. We have HUD housing programs. We got VA programs. We run on 4 separate fiscal years across multiple different federal and state and local agencies, and it's a very complex environment. I think it's about as complex as anything I've ever done, and I've done some complex stuff before.
Right. Probably with high speed stuff though.
Well, high speed, low drag. You know how that is.
Yes, and so going back to this point, having a population of veterans and some of the very traumatic things that they have undergone, just kind of the complexity of the emotions and other things that they're dealing with. You sit on top of this whole operation with this great responsibility, and you said the technologies will help you manage the data and deal with the data.
The data is about outcomes and being able to demonstrate outcomes, and that's what's really important for us, is to be able to tell people what is our social impact, what are we actually accomplishing. And it's one thing to say, hey, we've been in business for 35 years serving veterans and we should continue to serve veterans because we've always served veterans. Well, right. Okay, that's one thing, but the other thing is, what are you doing for veterans? And by what are we doing for veterans, what are we doing for society as a whole? And and you got to have the data to produce that. It's everybody, helping veterans is a feel-good thing. It really, nobody can argue with that. You should do that, but right. There's a lot of folks that are out there wanting to help veterans, but you need to be able to demonstrate what is your impact, what are you doing, and how is it not subjectively, but objectively making a difference in the world today. And that's what data does for you. It really does. It's not the end-all to be-all, but it is a huge piece of the pie. It really is.
Right, okay. And so with that, it's a perfect time to segue into Mike Manning. And so, Mike, I'll ask you to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your company, and then tie it into what Tim Williams just said about the data and the technologies, and what does it do for them in serving veterans?
Sure. I'm 63 years old. I think that's important.
So we like to say 63 years young.
Okay. But I feel like I'm on the backside of the slope, so every day is a great day. And we really live in a great country, and I think we all have that in common.
Right.
So when you think about veterans, you think about the country, because our country wouldn't be where it is today, and we are the greatest power on earth without the veterans. So making America great again means that we have to protect and preserve our resources, and veterans are actually the symbol for the rest of us when we decide whether or not we're going to commit ourselves to a patriotic duty of any type for this country.
So you have come up with a technology that you are sharing with the Veterans Multi-Service Center. How did this technology come about in the first place? How did you get involved in this? Because as I said to our listeners, you were a school teacher, then you were in the military, and here you are with patents and everything else.
Sure. So back in 1994, the FBI knocked on my door. I was the hospital CEO in Lafayette, Louisiana. And, so when the FBI knocks on the door and shows you their badge, you pay attention like anybody else would. It was a friendly call. He was just letting me know that he was in the neighborhood and that this was the beginning of the Stark Act. and this is where kickbacks and financial schemes of the sort in healthcare became the FBI's number one priority. Can you imagine that, right? Number one priority, guns blazing, the whole 9 yards. Anyway, I listened very intently and wanted to make sure I was on the right side of that gentleman.
Yes.
But what I learned was there were a lot of things for me to think about in my organization, because the way money moves back in those days in a hospital setting, when patients pay with cash or when cash changes hands, the accountability could be much tighter. Let me just put it that way. And so it just made me think about that, and I started thinking about ways of, like, well, how can we make sure that we're never in any trouble? Well, it took about 14 years for me to figure that one out. We didn't have any way from a technology perspective to apply any type of IT application. XML hadn't even been introduced yet. By 2002, 2003, I had been a hospital CEO a couple of times, and by then I already had a chain of companies of my own. And once it was available, that idea, I took it back off the shelf, and I wanted to understand how I could apply it across in a national setting. And so I went to Secretary of Health, Mike Leavitt. He was under Bush 2. And I introduced an idea to him, which he embraced completely, and he pointed me in a direction and said, basically, who do you want to talk to? What do you want? Because what you're bringing forward is this concept that people, patients, consumers, could actually provide information that you wouldn't ordinarily get because of the way the healthcare system's created. It ordinarily doesn't involve the direct engagement of patients when it comes to paying. It does now. And so he really liked that idea. He was trying to solve some big problems. But that's how we got started. And so we started working with CMS, and it was really conceptual at the time. And before long, they wanted us to do some demonstrations, so we got out in the most challenged environment, public assistance, and we deployed a system where we were demonstrating whether or not people would voluntarily utilize technology. It's such a big word. Before leaving the doctor's office. And so we had a landmark study. So we went into Pittsburgh, and 44%, the high water mark at the time was 0.5%, and it was paper-based. That people would provide input, any type of input. We were actually getting them to apply clinical input. We were in competition with the EMR in the sense of for intellectual awareness and attention. There was no market for what we were doing, and so we became an R&D company. And for the next 7 or 8 years, my investors hate hearing that. What we did was we did R&D. And
research and development, just in case anybody wants to know what that is.
There you go.
Yes.
And just like your pharmaceutical companies or your medical device companies, it's a long road. You have to do a lot of things because it's the most regulated industry in the United States. When you're dealing with human subjects.
Right.
And so eventually we got to a point where we had demonstrated and actually led the way for something called patient engagement. It's called patient-centered healthcare, patient engagement. There are a lot of different names, but we're now taught in a graduate level informatics classes. So if you go to our website, you'll see on our research page a lot of publications, peer-reviewed journal, types of things that scientists like to see. They don't like to hear the marketing panache and all that. They want to see the data, just like Tim was talking about. And so we were really breakthrough in the applications. It was definitely disruptive because it really displaced a lot of barriers and bottlenecks. You could get information directly from people, and in some cases that was uncomfortable to some of the existing power echelons. But as I was on my journey, there was a councilman named David Oh. You may know him.
Yes.
Who invited me to give testimony at one of his hearings about how veterans were being treated here in Philadelphia. And I had to think long and hard about it because I knew that the VA is the largest healthcare organization, basically outside of China, in the world. Mm-hmm. And so any organization that has 382,000 right? A couple divisions, right? 382,000 people work in the VA.
Right.
So any organization that large really needed to have a tight command and control, as we would say, in the military line of communication or situational awareness. And so what happened, Councilman, you introduced me to the VA. And at that point, what we understood is that we could introduce our technology into the VA to help veterans with the litany of problems that we listened to for hours and hours on end, and we continue to hear. So that's not to impugn the VA, because they're wonderful people. Many of them are veterans. They just have a tough time communicating. And so what we wanted to do is enable the veterans to get their services more rapidly. That's all we wanted to do. We wanted to take away bottlenecks and barriers. And the deeper we got involved, the more we learned, the more we built our system out till we're in the demonstration project that we're in today.
That demonstration project that you're in today with Tim Williams, with the Philadelphia Veterans Multi-Service Center, had a step before it, and that is that your technology is one of 7, I think, that was vetted and approved for review by the White House Office of Innovation.
That's correct. 6. One of 6.
One of 6.
Right.
Okay.
And that evaluation is still ongoing. And so what everyone's waiting for is the outcome, as Tim would say, of the data.
Right.
And so you can see a lot of different things right now that are important things. For example, do veterans embrace it? In other words, will they use technology? So I don't even like to call it technology because, again, it's a little too complicated. I like to say, do they use a smartphone? Do they use an iPad? Do they use a computer? And they're just like anyone else. When they want something, they use whatever device is available to get what they need. One of the things about our system is there are 2 different approaches to it. It's called self-directed. Me, the veteran, I want something. I use the device. I ask for it. It's an entitlement that I'm entitled to, so I'm not asking for something that I haven't already earned.
Right.
And that information goes directly to a paid professional in the VA that was hired to provide that service. Wow, what a novel idea. And so when that information goes to the individual, the veteran, me, I actually am told that it went to David Oh, and that I can expect that within a certain amount of time, somebody's going to address my issue. Do you know that's never done? So for a lot of veterans, when you go to the VA, you ask for something, and oftentimes somebody will acknowledge that you're asking for something, but they don't say, hey, within this much time, on this day and that day, you're going to receive this or that. And if you don't, guess what your options are? You don't have to do anything. We're going to automatically move this up the chain. Now, I say that we're all 3 ex-military members. When we were in the military, I can remember being in E1 all the way up to an 03. And when I was asked or told what to do, I did it. Right? I didn't think twice about not doing it. There were no exceptions. Otherwise, there were consequences. Right?
Absolutely.
And nobody asked me nicely. I don't remember you ever asked me nicely to do anything. Okay. But long story short.
Lots of grumpiness there.
There you go. Right. Just do what I say. Don't ask what I tell you to do. So, I've been very curious about why veterans have to struggle when they ask for what they're already entitled to. And I've always been dismayed at hearing the tone of voice that's used oftentimes with veterans, particularly those that are more challenged, the homeless, okay, those that are having difficulty, whatever reason. And I just know that that's not appropriate. And so what our technology allows for, our software, is for a veteran to access services without ever having to talk to anyone until it comes time for the actual service to be delivered. So that's one way. The other way is what we call provider-directed, which is what's going on in Colonel Williams' organization. And that is taking, when a veteran comes in order to get resupplied with a shower or food or whatever the resources are they need, to keep them in a natural workflow, right? Don't create a new process over here of something extra, But while they're going through the existing process, provide them with an opportunity to communicate things that someone may not find out about until it's too late.
Right.
And that's really where we get into end homelessness and suicide and addiction. And you'd be surprised that people are more willing to tell a device, something that's intimate than they may tell the person across the table. But what it does is it creates an opportunity for a professional to then investigate with the veteran and bring up perhaps the issue that the veteran brought up. Now, this is all about identifying high significance problems. We don't collect anything that's arbitrary. Everything that we collect is high significance. Anything we report is, if you don't do this, something may happen consequential to the veteran or whoever's involved. So it's a real-time application that provides those kind of services. There's a lot more to talk about, but what I do want to circle back in terms of the Colonel's organization, so efficiency is really important to their organization, because these organizations, I'm just going to say it as it is, they don't get paid much money to do what they do, and so they've got to split that dollar in 10 different ways to help that veteran, because it's going to the veteran.
Right. Otherwise, the veteran doesn't get the services that they need. Yeah.
That's it.
In a timely manner.
Yes.
And so if you can help create efficiencies for them, so that you can eliminate bottlenecks, not that they create, but that other parties create, just because they're not connected, you can now help improve the efficiency of that organization.
Okay, well, listen, we're going to continue this discussion right after this commercial break, so stay tuned.
You are listening to In the Know with David O. Informative, substantive, intelligent talk radio on 860 AM WWDB.
If you've suffered an injury from a motor vehicle crash, trip and fall, construction, or work-related accident, contact the Padova firm to speak with John Padova himself. You've heard the name. That's because for over 25 years, John has been winning for his clients. John is dedicated to ensuring his clients are fully compensated. Call 215-893-0700. That's 215-893-0700. Don't suffer more than you have to. Call John Padova today. Help is on the way.
Here at Sonny's Famous Cheesesteaks, we have the utmost respect for the founding fathers of our fair city's most celebrated sandwich. But we also understand the inevitability of time marching on. So come to Sonny's in Old City for a revolutionary take on the classic. And try the cheesesteak that Alan Richmond of GQ magazine named the best in Philadelphia. And declare your inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of cheesiness. Sonny's Famous Steaks, 228 Market.
My friends, this is Joe Kraus. You've heard me on Philadelphia radio now for over 20 years, and you know I don't often endorse products or people unless they are real game changers. I want to tell you about Weinerman Pain and Wellness, located in Center City, Philadelphia. And at the end of this short personal endorsement, I want you to consider Weinerman Pain and Wellness. If you are recovering from an injury, if you or a family member has been diagnosed with a disorder that has stopped you in your tracks, or if you're like me, determined to learn about wellness while getting yourself prepared to stay healthy so you can enjoy the blessings of your family. Remember the name of this warm and caring location, Weinerman Pain and Wellness. Why should you consider Weinerman Pain and Wellness? Because they are who you expect them to be. Weinerman Pain and Wellness, on the web at WeinermanPainandWellness.com.
Weinerman Pain and Wellness, located at 100 South Broad Street, just south of City Hall. Call Weinerman Pain and Wellness at 215-988-9503. That's 215-988-9503. Call today. Today's broadcast is brought to you by the Philly Labor RX Injured Workers Pharmacy Network, featuring PPC Pharmacy, First Choice Pharmacy, and Precision Scripts, providing injured workers with premium products and services from the point of injury through the entire healing process. The Philly Labor RX Pharmacy Network cares about injured workers.
Every day, the men and women of the United States Marine Corps demonstrate their commitment to defend the American way of life. Since 1775, we have served our nation as a force in readiness. From combat operations to humanitarian assistance in every corner of the world. No matter where the mission takes us today, or wherever our country needs us tomorrow, we always remember the land we call home. As Marines, we take a stand for each other, for our nation, for us all. The few, the proud, the Marines.
All right, and we are back. We're talking to Colonel Retired Tim Williams. He's the Executive Director of the Veterans Multi-Service Center in Philadelphia and 3 other states, part of 3 other states. So he's quite, I couldn't even say regional. He's multi-state. And Mike Manning, CEO of CarePartners Plus, a technology innovation company that provides avenues to better healthcare. We are talking about technology and how technology can facilitate, help, and significantly impact these 3 problems that is being tested in a pilot program with the Veterans Multi-Service Center. That is homelessness, suicide, and drug abuse, substance abuse. Let me shout out a couple of things before we continue our discussion. The first is that we're in our 4th annual PHL Live Center Stage, and that's brought to you by Coors Light. Coors Light is the sponsor, so the key thing that you're hearing is it's not funded through your tax dollars. So listen, it's privately funded through the generous contributions of organizations like Coors Light. And what it is, it's really about people being the best they can. And for those who are well educated and have a great job, but really want to be something else or somebody else, here's an opportunity. But especially for those who are talented and may not have an avenue to being the person they want to be, a musician, for example, here is an avenue. It's free. You just simply upload your YouTube video of your musical performance to our website. It's www.phlive.org. It's free. There's 10 categories, and we have Grammy Award winners, Grammy-nominated music industry leaders who will review those videos, make a selection of 5 finalists, and the 5 finalists perform live in some of Philadelphia's finest music venues, and then winners are selected, and there's $11,000 in prize money, as well as free studio recording time and other great opportunities. Staying on the same subject of the creative arts economy, if you're not a musician but you're a filmmaker or want to be a filmmaker, one of the big problems that everyone's going to have to face once you get past your talent and ability is how do you finance that? How do you produce it and distribute your film? And so I invite you to a free discussion of experts on how to finance, produce, and distribute your film. This is going to be on Thursday, September the 28th, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Community College of Philadelphia at the Bonnell Building, 17th and Spring Garden. We have 4 experts, including Alex Murphy. He is an attorney with 35 years' experience who focuses on entertainment, the business of entertainment, and he's been involved in financing everything from super major motion pictures to local, as he says, indigenous films. We've heard that word, indigenous, right? Indigenous. So, local films and documentaries, as well as Gabriella Watson Arazo. She is a international documentary filmmaker. She's an adjunct professor at Temple. Devin Hampton, who is a filmmaker, right now out getting his film funded, and Rel Daldo, screenwriter, film director, and producer. And then finally, kind of keeping on today's topic, I would like to really encourage everyone, and I know a lot of our listeners, are patriots and really appreciate our nation and appreciate those who provide the wall between us and the bad guys, that help us to be a free country. And kind of at the tip of that spear are the U.S. Army Green Berets. The U.S. Army Special Forces, known for wearing the Green Beret. And so we have an event on Friday, October the 6th, and it is an event to raise money to support the Green Berets through their scholarship fund. Listen, these guys put their lives at risk, and we could put their minds at ease by letting them know that their children and their dependents are taken care of in terms of what is very important to them, having a great future in the land that they defend, and that is through the scholarship fund that helps them, get a good education. I'm proud to say that former Governor and Mayor Ed Rendell will join us, the Speaker of the Pennsylvania House, Mike Turzai. Our former Undersecretary of the Army, Congressman Pat Murphy, will be joining us, as well as these great speakers, including a Virginia delegate and former Green Beret, Nick Freitas, Sergeant Major Albert Slagosky, who, by the way, not only did 5 tours in Vietnam and fought in the Korean War, he also escorted President Kennedy's casket. And of course, Mike Manning, CEO of CarePartners Plus, who's joining us today to tell us, to talk to our group there about healthcare and healthcare innovation. By the way, Colonel Tim Williams is the first name you see on our host committee. There are a bunch of others: Lieutenant Commander Ryan Peters, Terry English, Special Forces Charitable Trust, Matt Weintraub from the Bucks County DA's office, and so many others. Terry Williamson, Philadelphia Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Friday, October 6th, 6 p.m. at the Saigon Maxim Restaurant, holds about 350 people. 6th and Washington Avenue. 6th and Washington, free parking. It's $65 per ticket. Look, we don't make a lot of money on these tickets, so bring your wallet. We will have great auction items, raffle items. American Dinosaur, one of our sharp rising rock bands will be performing. International DJ Casper, the 2nd Street Irish Society Pipes and Drums, and, by the way, WBA World Boxing Champion Danny Swift Garcia will be making a appearance as well. And we're still working on it. I'd like to thank many of the people: AT&T, Verizon, Wells Fargo, PECO, Transport Workers Union 234, American Heritage Federal Credit Union, 82nd Airborne Philadelphia Chapter, and CarePartners Plus, among others, for supporting this event. Joe Bucci Jewelers, donated $1,000 worth of jewelry to be auctioned off. And so, listen, this will be a fun event with a lot of happy people at the end. So please take time for the Green Beret fundraiser. Well, let me get back to our guests. We were listening to Mike Manning talk about the technologies, what they do. Let's go back to Tim. Tim, Mike was talking about the technologies, what they can do. And so, as you were talking about what you do, what your organization does, over 100 people working in 3 different states, serving over 3,000 veterans, the technology is helpful in what manner?
Well, it's helpful for us to be able to break down stovepipes and share information, and you hear those type of things all the time. But we have multiple programs that are administered in multiple different ways, and our job is, or one of our biggest challenges is to tie those programs together into a system so that we can take a veteran wherever he or she is, move them through a system, through a process, to an outcome, rather than just helping him. For instance, they need housing. We help house them, then we are in a housing program and we basically forget about them, and next thing you know, they come out as part of a recidivism rate. The data tells us that there's recidivism, and they're out of the house again, but we haven't put them in an employment program to help them sustain housing. Oh, by the way, they have medical issues that need to be looked at, or mental health issues, or those type of things, or they have benefits that they are entitled to that they have not filed for, those type of things. So cutting down the stovepipes between those programs are important. And it's also important that if we serve a veteran, that veteran's data is available to other programs also who may need to serve that veteran in the future, so that we're not duplicating work. we're not, replicating the same services to the same veteran all the time. So it's a matter of efficiency as well as a matter of effectiveness. And we're very effective, I think, at delivering services at the point of need to a veteran, but it's taking it to that next level and making it more efficient and more timely that I think that, and being able to demonstrate to the public what the social impact is, I think is key too. So it's, the data management is key to the future of the really delivering social impact.
Well, one of the things that the Veterans Multi-Service Center is known for, and particularly, might I say, under your leadership, is getting the job done, getting it done in a timely fashion, and I think that's the reason you've grown. But on top of that, what we can see is that the VMC is always looking for the next way of being ahead of the curve. And so how did this pilot program come about? Because not everybody would do a pilot program as busy as they are with the entrenched workforce and paperwork and problems and issues.
Well, we've been looking for a way to better our data management or make get a toehold in the data management field and do something more than just hand jam numbers, basically. And that's the way we've been doing things in the past is paper, gathering numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and at the end of the month I get a data roll up. But it's been for folks, it takes you a week and a half to collect it, those type of things, instead of being able to basically pull data to match what it is, that outcome that you're trying to see if you've been effective or not. Yes. And the key to data management is it may not always tell you what you want to hear. That's the real issue. And I think a lot of times if you have too many in a manual process, a lot of times you get the information that you want to hear rather than the information that you need to hear. So we were looking for a way to better manage data, and Mike came in and said, look, you're an organization that touches a lot of veterans, and we're looking to utilize data and move to break down barriers and choke points and those type of things. And I said, hey man, that sounds exactly like what we've been wanting to try to do, and we're in. So that's we're about halfway through now, I think.
Okay, question for both of you. I mean, and for our listening audience, listen, veterans is a whole big world, and there's so many successful veterans, so many wealthy and veterans. But you guys in particular are dealing with veterans who really rely on the system, who really need this system, don't always get what they need, and sometimes, in some cases, are very poorly served by the system, in part through no fault of their own, and sometimes in part through no fault of their own, but because they have difficult issues that they're dealing with. And so when you look at, the challenges of the population that you're serving and needing to motivate those people who serve them, not by the way just in your system, but throughout the VA healthcare system and benefit system, what are some of the challenges that you think these technologies can really help you in dealing with the veterans population that you serve?
Well, I think prevention is key, too, as to work towards things like raising red flags about folks that are susceptible to opioid abuse or to suicide ideations, or to homelessness, and prevention. And I think that's preventing things rather than reacting to them are key. And we have multiple systems set up. The government is known for reacting to things, and as well they should, but not so known for preventing things. And I think that's something that we need to move towards in the future is prevention rather than reaction, and also sustaining the goals that we've already accomplished. For instance, we've housed a coalition in Philadelphia in the last 3 years, a coalition to end veterans homelessness, which is an array of federal agencies, state agencies, local agencies, and nonprofits came together and have housed over 1,900 veterans, homeless veterans, in the last 3 years. But now we're facing a recidivism rate that's closing in on 20%, and we also want to sustain those folks in housing. It's not just it's housing only, it's housing first, not housing only. And you just don't house someone and then say, okay, check that block they're housed and move on out. So being able to share information, move information quickly, and to be able to raise flags in prevention indicators, I think on certain, so you can intervene or in an early enough time to catch someone before they're completely down and out, I think is critical, and that's where this system comes into play seriously.
Okay, and I'm going to read this statement for our listeners, and it's talking about suicide, homelessness, and substance abuse. Quote, to end these epidemics, they must be prevented. To prevent them requires early detection and rapid interventions, end quote. Mike, how does your technologies do those things?
Well, first of all, Colonel Williams described the system extremely well. Thank you for that, truly. Everyone doesn't understand it as well as he does, so that's
Thank you for that, Mike. Yeah.
So the long story short is what you try to do is not create a new process. You try to stay within the natural flow of things. So in the case of veterans that are coming into the multi-resource center, they're ordinarily providing information when they come in, whether it's about current issues or an update of information. That's an ideal opportunity to capture their state of mind. And so you can ask a few questions. These are tools that have been tested by the leading mental health professionals in the country. And you can ask a couple of questions and identify whether or not they're in any imminent threat. And you could do the same thing on the addiction side. And so for those people that are interested in getting help, they're finally to that breaking point. They want help. They want to fight back. It's an opportunity for them to raise their hand. We're grown men and women, and so it's a very difficult thing to do this. Sometimes people talk about, reintegrating as though it was a 1, 2, 3 step. But right. It's probably the most difficult challenge that people have. I listen to the stories. I'm based out of D.C. For the pilot, and gee whiz, I thought that I could overcome most obstacles. And when I listen to some of the stories that a lot of the population that I interact with share with me, I just can't fathom being able to pick myself up as often as they've had to. And for them to keep trying, I would keep putting my hand out every time because it is no easy task, and it's unfortunate that they're in that circumstance. But technology is really the answer because you don't have enough people to spread through their day-to-day life and be able to capture the information when it's vital. So automation does that for you.
Yeah, and let me say that as you're talking, I'm thinking about another problem that I'm kind of faced with, and that is the opioid heroin epidemic that we're facing. And, the problem that we run into is it's really when a person is ready for help that we need to be able to serve them, and that window is short. Sometimes they're ready for help today, and 3 days later they're not ready for help. And there's so much bureaucracy and problems in them even being identified and finding a bed, and they gotta. But as you said, listen, if they had a device or there was someone with a device and they could press a button and it says, I need help and I'm ready for help, and we could pick them up right then because they're more likely to be successful. And so, in a way that I think many people can understand, the technology really, it's not replacing people, it's really identifying in a way that we can actually serve who is ready, who needs what, and to be able to track it and be accountable. And as Tim said, hey, the data is the data. It doesn't lie. You can't change it. It tells you what happened, and sometimes things that you didn't expect. Sometimes you don't want to see it, but it helps guide you to the best services. Tim, is that your experience in this? How is this pilot? What do you see happening with this pilot?
Well, I tell you, the first thing I saw happening with it was that there was a little reticence, from our folks. Change is tough, and driving changes and getting folks to take ownership of change is a little tough too. But so we had some folks that are going, well, I don't know, we've been doing pretty successful at what we've been doing for years, so why do we need to do this? Right. And the answer is, well, why do we not need to do it? Because you do have to stay up with what's happening, and data is and gathering data and using data and manipulating data and getting data to tell the true story is something that is coming into its own right now, and we've got to be part of that. So so folks were a little reticent to start with, but now they've embraced it completely. We've overcame a couple of 3 issues that we had with the startup. There's startup cost involved with everything, and we've overcome those issues, and we've hit mid-stride now, and I think that it's going really well. I don't know exactly what it's going to tell us. That's what we're waiting on is the results of the pilot. But I'm excited about it. I really am. I think it's the wave of the future. I think it's necessary for us to be able to do things to get more agility in our process, make our process more. I believe our processes are effective now, but making them more efficient and making them more agile so that they can react in time to catch that person, as you said, when they are ready at that point in need. And I think there's another point that I'd like to say is that, veterans represent our entire society, and there are plenty of veterans, as you said before, that are extremely successful, that have no problem with transition and move on into lucrative careers and those type of things, just like there are folks in society that do that. But there are, just as there are folks in society that are at danger of homelessness or homeless, that have issues with substance abuse, that have issues with thoughts of suicide and those type of things. So do we have veterans that have those same issues, and that's what we're here to do primarily, is to serve those veterans who have high barriers, who have issues, who may not be able to deal with the various things that society today throws at them. That's the kind of what we concentrate on. Not necessarily, we're not here to say that all veterans have issues. That's for sure. That's not true. But there are, as with our regular population, there are some veterans that need a lot of help, and we're here to do that. That's what we're about, is providing services to veterans.
Okay, fantastic. Well, listen, we're going to take our last commercial break, and when we come back, we'll get the final word on all of this from Tim Williams and Mike Manning.
You are listening to In the Know with David O. Informative, substantive, intelligent talk radio on 860 AM WWDB.
If you've suffered an injury from a motor vehicle crash, trip and fall, construction, or work-related accident, contact the Padova firm to speak with John Padova himself. You've heard the name. That's because for over 25 years, John has been winning for his clients. John is dedicated to ensuring his clients are fully compensated. Call 215-893-0700. That's 215-893-0700. Don't suffer more than you have to. Call John Padova today. Help is on the way.
My friends, this is Joe Kraus. You've heard me on Philadelphia radio now for over 20 years, and I don't often endorse products or people unless they are real game changers. I want to tell you about Weinerman Pain and Wellness, located in Center City, Philadelphia. And at the end of this short personal endorsement, I want you to consider Weinerman Pain and Wellness. If you are recovering from an injury, if you or a family member has been diagnosed with a disorder that has stopped you in your tracks, or if you're like me, determined to learn about wellness while getting yourself prepared to stay healthy so you can enjoy the blessings of your family. Remember the name of this warm and caring location, Weinerman Pain and Wellness. Why should you consider Weinerman Pain and Wellness? Because they are who you expect them to be. Weinerman Pain and Wellness, on the web at WeinermanPainandWellness.com.
Weinerman Pain and Wellness, located at 100 South Broad Street, just south of City Hall. Call Weinerman Pain and Wellness at 215-988-9503. That's 215-988-9503. Call today. Today's broadcast is brought to you by the Philly Labor RX Injured Workers Pharmacy Network, featuring PPC Pharmacy, First Choice Pharmacy, and Precision Scripts, providing injured workers with premium products and services from the point of injury through the entire healing process. The Philly Labor RX Pharmacy Network cares about injured workers.
Are you thinking about getting your GED diploma? Well, here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we've got a number of pep talks that can motivate you.
Sometimes things don't always turn out the way you want them to.
You know that feeling? People look at you and don't believe in you.
You want some gentle encouragement.
Then you're on your way to your GED diploma and a better life.
But I know they're probably just a little bit nervous. You can find it in yourself to take that first step.
You can improve your future. You can do this. I know you can.
You need to start pushing yourself.
Now get your game face on and take the first step towards a better life. Hurry up. Don't make me repeat myself.
Whatever level of motivation you need to get your GED diploma, we've got a pep talk that's right for you. Call 1-877-38-YOUR-GED or visit yourged.org for your pep talk and find free GED classes in your area. GED is a registered trademark of the American Council on Education. Brought to you by Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
All right, we are back with just a couple minutes left, and so I'd like to ask Mike Manning, what is the next step? What comes from this pilot program for the technology and for what you're trying to do?
Sure. First of all, I'd like everyone to know that the name of the software is Get Vets Help. Get Vets Help. The conclusion of the pilot will be in about 2 weeks, and at that time, what we'll do is be able to identify the number of issues or problems that veterans were able to communicate and the interventions that occurred as a result. So you can identify how many problems you were able to avoid, as well as being able to identify the number of veterans that voluntarily participated. And naturally, all of the recommendations that will come from the individuals that we're collaborating with, people at Colonel Williams' organization, as well as the VA here in Philadelphia. A shout out to Casey McCullough, who really is a top drawer in terms of case management for our veterans.
Yes, she is, really true.
And a counterpart of hers would be Kevin Morton in D.C. At the VA CRRC. And then again, the people that are walking the streets, the case managers that are walking the streets in Bucks County and also in Camden, New Jersey. So actually, we're about to get a acknowledgement and endorsement from the top 4 veteran service organizations, so we're excited about that. So I'll be happy to come back and tell you what the results are with Tim, so we can tell you whether or not it was worthwhile or not.
Okay, and Tim, I know that you got a big fundraiser coming up. When is that?
Well, we got a golf outing that's coming up on the 18th of September, next Monday, and we're always looking for donations, of course, you know. And if folks want to check us out, they can go to our website, which is Victor Mike Center, VMCENTER.org, and I just want folks to know that we're always ready to veterans better off when they come to see us than they are when they leave. They're better off when they leave.
All right. Thank you.
You've been listening to In the Know with David O on 860 AM WWDB. Tune in again next Tuesday at 2 p.m. for more informative, substantive, intelligent talk radio with Philadelphia Councilman David O.